I believe he's someone you know. One veteran who served 4 tours in 5 years as a Marine officer in Iraq has raised millions for this effort with his Serve America PAC. Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts joins us now. Also with us, one of those Iraq War veterans running for office, retired Air Force intelligence officer and Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress in the 23rd District of the state of Texas, Gina Ortiz Jones. Good to have you both on board.
Great to have you all
here.
You know, Seth, I learned very quickly in Congress that just because somebody served in war doesn't necessarily make them a Republican or a Democrat, a liberal or a conservative. But it still is so important to have people who have served to understand what the men and women in the armed forces are going through every day.
It's one of our most sacred responsibilities as a Congress to decide when we send our young men and women to war. But more than that, people who have had to put their lives on the line for the country, they know a little bit about public service. They know a little bit about doing the right thing for the country rather than your political bosses in Washington or, you know, your party.
It does, and I think beyond insight for what our veterans experience in the field and then back at home, Gina, I wonder what else you think you bring to the table that can help fix Washington if you think it's broken.
Well, actually, just to the last point that was discussed, I mean, we also know the importance of our partners and our allies, whether I was in Iraq or advising on operations on Africa or even working on the economic and national security issues when I was at the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. All of that is shaped by our partners and our allies, just given the kind of world that we live in. So I also, you know, having worked in national security for 14 years, I know you don't have true national security if you don't have a strong middle class. Right, so that's why, yes, I'm the veteran running in this race, but I'm talking about health care. I'm talking about, you know, the need for a strong immigration policy and the need for it to invest in what really makes us strong, which is smart and healthy kids.
So you're running against Will Hurd, who has a good deal of experience as well. So what differentiates you, and how is the campaign going?
I think it's going very well. I think what differentiates us is the lessons that we took from our time serving our country. So look, when I sit on the HPC, I'm not going to be writing op-eds. I'm going to be writing legislation that keeps us safe, right? You can't, frankly, be outraged on CNN and complicit in Congress. That is not how this works, right?
So, and by the way, we'll need to get Will on at some point. We've offered many times, Alex tells me in my ear. So, Seth, we started reading stories 6, 7 years ago of young men and women in Iraq in the midst of the most chaotic times, 2005, 2006, 2007, where you would have somebody who's 24, 25 years old put in charge of running a town, get the water running, get the sewer up, get the lights back on. And it was, at the time, the articles were suggesting that these officers would be hot commodities in business because they've, you know, it's like the Army, you do more before, you know, 7 o'clock or whatever the expression is. Well, there are 25, 26, 27-year-olds that did more before they turned 30 than a lot of people do in their entire lifetime.
You actually learn leadership. It's a tremendous responsibility to have to take on the safety and well-being of a platoon of young men and women or an entire Iraqi town. And that level of leadership experience, I don't think you get almost anywhere else in the world than when you're put in a position like that in Iraq and or Afghanistan. And when the other thing that veterans bring is political courage. And people ask me all the time, they say, Seth, why is Congress so stupid? How can Congress not believe in climate change or whatever? And my observation after being there for 3 years is that most of my colleagues are pretty smart. There are a few exceptions, but most of them are really pretty smart. What's lacking in Washington isn't intelligence, it's courage. It's just the willingness to do what's right, to say what's right, to take the tough vote, even if you know it might hurt your re-election process.
Well, and Donnie, that's like, you know, when everybody's bringing John McCain and talking about how courageous he was courageous by Washington standards, but here's a man who was a prisoner of war and remained a prisoner of war, even though he was being beaten and tortured and brutalized, but he made that choice because he wasn't going to go home without his band of brothers. And you get to Washington, suddenly those, quote, courageous decisions don't seem that tough to make.
Yeah, I want to get a two-shot of these. First of all, thank you, both of you guys, for your service. This is a roadmap for the Democrats. You put a veteran, the one thing Democrats have always been missing kind of is that what I call strength, testosterone. I don't even mean that in the gender point of view. And once you put a veteran, imagine any veteran standing on stage opposite Donald Trump, just right off the bat. Just the level of courage, the level of character would add so much. It was interesting. A few weeks ago, I was with the DNC guys. I said, just run veterans, because you can't argue with you guys. The level of courage, the level of character. Everything else is BS. Once versus what you guys have done. That's it. Everything else falls from that. So, just from a pure branding point of view, just give me a veteran every single time. So first, thank you. This is the formula for Democrats.
So now we're going to try something different. We're going to go to Susan, and she's going to ask a question. Susan?
Well, I do agree with much of what Donnie said, except I think it's okay for Democrats and Republicans.
Yes.
I'm talking
who
good
have
guys.
served. So am I. Because there are.
Yes, there are.
Okay.
I have amazing relationships with veterans across the aisle.
Well, and then that goes to and kind of leading to my question. I've heard many times when you're serving, you don't look to your left and right and wonder who's a Republican, independent, a liberal, a conservative. But there is politics involved when you are elected to Congress, and I guess I kind of put this question to both of you as, how do you see Democratic leadership in the House right now? And is it something that needs to change with the changing of elected officials like yourself, or what you hope to be?
I think it is time for a new generation of leadership. Not just in Washington in general, not just kicking the Republicans out and bringing some balance back, but in our own party. And we've got to look ourselves in the mirror as Democrats and recognize that we're in the worst electoral position we've been since the 1920s. In the White House, the House, the Senate, in state legislatures across the country where we've lost 1,000 seats in the last decade. And you can't just say, oh, we have the worst president ever, and not look at us and say, okay, then why aren't we winning?
Right.
So we've got to make some changes too. And this new generation of leaders, a lot of veterans, a lot of other great public servants who are running in these races, and a more extraordinary number of women who are standing up to run on the Democratic side. You're not seeing that on the Republican side, but Democratic women who are standing up to run. It's incredible. And the best recruiter that we have out there is our commander-in-chief.
So, Gina, to close, beyond Trump, what's the message of your campaign?
Well, look, who's going to fight for you? Who has your best interests at heart, right? Whether it's on health care, the person I'm running against has voted 8 times against that, right? We are pushing forward to make sure that everybody has the opportunities, same opportunities that allowed me to go from reduced lunch to executive office of the president. That only happened because my community, our country invested in me, right? And that requires a strong middle class. And so the question about party leadership doesn't come up. What does come up is, are you going to fight for me because my kid has a pre-existing condition? And my answer is yes. My opponent cannot say the same.
So,
all right.
One really quick question. So you had quite an episode up in your district last week before. A lot of houses spontaneously combusting, blowing up, a lot of fires. I understand Columbia Gas did a terrible job, didn't respond, and if it weren't for the first responders, more people could have died up there. What's happening with this gas company? And are you getting to the bottom of that?
Well, we're going to hold them accountable. Our first priority is to just get people back in their homes. And a lot of people right now are back in their homes, but are looking at not having any gas service, no hot water, no heat for the next 5 or 6 weeks.
Wow.
But after that, we're going to hold this company responsible. It took them 5 hours to even announce there was a problem, let alone tell people to evacuate or how to be safe in their homes. When you go to sleep at night in Afghanistan, if you're a terrorist, you recognize, okay, my house might blow up. You shouldn't go to sleep in North Andover or Lawrence, Massachusetts and be worried about your house blowing up before the morning.
All right, keep us posted. Congressman Seth Moulton and Gina Ortiz-Jones, thank you so much. Good luck to you. Coming up.
And our invitation to Will Hurd.